273 days since the Illini beat Northwestern to cap off the 2021 season in high fashion. They return to the field again. The Wyoming Cowboys in-house, and we've got you covered for opening weekend here on the Sports Spectacular and lots more. Nick Saban, Urban Meyer, Albert Pujols all in the news. Josh Whitman talking about the massive Big Ten media deal. The voice of the Illini, Brian Barnhart, stops in. And the Wyoming perspective from a reporter out in Laramie. Give us 2 hours and we give you omnipotence over your fellow fans. How you like that, Thesaurus boys? Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy, Mike Kegley here. Fellas, here we go. Illini and the Cowboys at Memorial Stadium.
Finally. I mean, it's like it just football is such a great sport, but man, 8 months off is just so hard to wait, or 9 months in some cases almost. But you're just like excited for that first game now. I'm like, I'm pumped, man. I got the adrenaline flowing. Let's go.
Yeah, I think it's going to be great, especially, I think it's so smart for Illinois to play in week 0. So you get a little bit of time that you're on the highlight reels. You give kids a chance to go ahead and see you, and you win and take care of business. And that we need all the good press we can get as a team. And I think it's fantastic.
Well, and it's, I've got to go back. I'll admit I haven't researched this, but I would think that, back-to-back opening day wins are not always a given for Illinois football for the past 3 decades. So you have a chance, and I know we're going to talk a lot about this here as we discussed in our pre-show meeting, about momentum and about, getting off to a good start and getting fans in the seats. This is not going to be a sellout by any stretch. We saw last year in year 1, the game 1 against Nebraska, you had a good showing by the fans. Let's try to build on that. And we're going to hear from Brett Bielema here in a few minutes about how important that really is to kind of make this a home field again. And the way we remember it when we were younger, growing up in central Illinois and having 60, 65,000 fans there. That's what this can become, but you got to win to get there.
Yeah, it's winning is a big part of this. And what people don't, it's recruiting. It's important for recruiting too. You got to win some games. It doesn't mean you got to go to the Rose Bowl or go to the national championship game or college football playoff, but you got to be consistently winning games, going to bowl games. And once you do that, people become interested. It's an upset here, an upset there. And they started that a little bit last year. You saw them finish strong. They can carry that into this year. I think as this year goes on, you win these first 3 games, there's going to be a lot of excitement headed into the Big Ten season.
Yeah, and if Barry Lunny Jr. can get that offense clicking, I feel quite confident in Coach Walters and Coach B to have a defense that's going to give opportunities for the Illini to win. And to me, it comes down to what this offense is capable of. And they string together a few wins. The Memorial Stadium is a heck of a place to watch a football game in. We all 3 grew up going over there and watching games. And when they are good, it is a great experience that's underrated because there's been no reason to cover it much for any of the networks. So maybe Coach B can give these guys some motivation to bring some cameras and show people what Memorial Stadium's all about.
Well, you look at the schedule here, Saturday versus Wyoming. Then next Friday, you open Big Ten season at Indiana on a Friday night game. That's that FS1 game. You return the following Saturday, the rematch game against Virginia. That was one of the 2 games that you were not in at all last year that were losses no matter how you cut it. The other games you actually, even though they were losses, you actually were in. But so you've got a score to settle with the Cavaliers coming in, and then Chattanooga after a week off on September 22nd, a Thursday night. So, you've got those where it's, again, I've talked before, it's not impossible to think that you could be having winning record coming out of September going into the Meteor schedule, and that tough game at Wisconsin, then at Iowa here in October, and then Minnesota for homecoming at home. So a chance here again to maybe start the season, 2-2 or better in the Big Ten. We've talked so much about what basketball did and how they had to start here and then move up, and we'll see now at Brett Bielema what's happened in the first year and a half he's been with the program and what can he do in year 2. I want to talk a little basketball before we go to break because we're going to talk a lot of football here. Brad, we've got some possible big news coming up here on Sunday in regards to basketball. What's going on?
Yeah, 6'8", 235-pound power forward center Amani Hansberry from out on the East Coast in the Baltimore area, is going to make his decision or announce his decision on Sunday, August 28th, at 2:00. He's got Illinois, Penn State, Virginia Tech, Miami, Auburn among his final 5, and the Illini are in a really good position for this kid. And he was the guy they coveted. This is the guy they followed all through July. They saw every game he played, and sometimes they were 3 coaches deep for his game, or 4. And they really want this kid. They really feel like he's a kid who can help this program immediately, can make a big impact. And he's just the guy they wanted in this class when they watched everybody else. He really fits the style of play that Brad Underwood wants.
And I'll tell you what, if Bruce Pearl of Auburn wants a kid, that's another good confirmation, just like Brad Underwood. That means he's a good player. And then if Illinois can manage to take a player away from Bruce Pearl at Auburn, that's even better than him being a great player. So we've got a chance here for a very positive weekend. And Bruce Pearl, I hope that Amani picks Brad Underwood.
I've got just a few seconds. Brad, give us a comparison of a player. And I know I hate doing this because that sets the bar too high. But what kind of style? Like we've said that Ty Rodgers is like a Draymond Green type. He's just calls himself a dog. He just goes out and just gets it done. Is there a player whose skill set you would compare to?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if I have a skilled player, but I'll tell you what he is. He's a 6'8" guy. He can play inside. He can play out. He can put the ball on the floor. Excellent feel. Excellent passer. Fantastic passer. And he can deck it, get to the rim. He's not dissimilar, perhaps a little bit more polished than Dane Danger, who's already on the Illinois roster. And that kind of player is a little bit more, a little bit fitter at the same stage than Dane was. But he's got a special ability. He had a great summer and went up the rankings. Is now in the top 50 range. So he's just a really good player.
Well, I think that also gives some insight on Dane Danger and what you and the coaches have been saying this entire offseason about his skill set. So good times. And again, that decision coming up on Sunday, Amani Hansberry, it appears could be the first and possibly, you said, the only high school prospect in the class of 2023 for Brad Underwood. Hey, this reminder, one more football note before we take a break. If you are coming to the game on Saturday, be sure to stop by the Illini Guys tent in Grange Grove. Say hi, get a bottle of water, a snack or something, get a free gift from us as well. We'll all be there. We'd love to say hi and just maybe take a picture with you and say hi. Definitely please do that. We are in Grange Grove all during pregame on Saturday. Hey, Brett Bielema's game week comments and analysis from Matt Stevens of IlliniGuys.com. That's all straight ahead on the Illini Guys Radio Network. Our Newsmaker segment presented by Busey Bank. There's nothing like week 1, or in this case, week 0, if you're a football coach. 8 months of planning, 4 weeks of preseason camp, and now time to see how it all comes together. Brett Bielema is excited to begin year 2 with the Illini. Let's listen in on a bit of his news conference.
There's so many little indicators for me as a head coach. A year ago, you guys asked me, how do you feel? Different from spring, and there's definitely just been a consistent evolution to get to where we are right now. And I couldn't be more excited. I've been doing this for quite a while as a head coach. I believe I'm going into my 14th year, and just to see what I've seen happen since last fall when we got done through the portal process, through spring ball, through fall camp now, and to get into game week, and there's been a time when I've been more excited. I'm talking after a Big Ten championship and projections to win one. This group of guys is very special, and I think it's going to be one of those type of years.
Coach, how's the health of the team going?
You know what? I've been very, we got a Madwood podium. Just met with the docs yesterday. Have been very impressed with not just our overall health, but just our ability to handle the moments that have popped up. Had a couple soft tissues, had a couple guys with concussion systems that worked their way through it. But T-Raw was really the only guy that came into camp limited. Sean Miller was limited, but he got cleared. He took a couple pops, direct hits on that shoulder during scrimmaging, so we're 100% sitting on ready. There's a couple guys that are soft tissue that I think will be cleared by midweek, but for the most part, we're overall very healthy.
Great update on the starting quarterback position.
The starting quarterback position, it took 2 questions. I know who the starting quarterback is. The starting quarterback knows who the starting quarterback is, and our team knows that, right? I think our guys understand the value of these first games, what it allows us to do. I think we learned it last year firsthand that sometimes to show up on game day and let everybody see the University of Illinois unfolded for the first time in reality is a good thing. So we'll kind of stick to that messaging. But I would say the two top candidates have been. I've been around Art for obviously a full season now. I think the concerns that we had going in the first place when I told Art that we were going to go after a quarterback that was going to be a portal quarterback, I'm very upfront with our players. I think one of the things I greatly respect is the relationship that I have with our players of being honest, full throttle. And I told him, specifically about Tommy, right? And Art's reaction then is the same that it is right now today. I think he wants Illinois to be successful. He obviously has individual dreams and goals, but those two have built a relationship that I've seen a lot of good quarterback relationships. Those two are, as you know, they're kind of unique, different people, right? From the same area of the country and all that, but two kind of different guys, but they get along extremely well. To watch their interaction during practice, to see them, hear them compete is awesome. And I would say both of them, obviously I've known Tommy less, but both of them are playing as good at football right now today as I've ever seen either one of them play.
Do you have an update on Luke Ford?
Yeah, Luke, by NCAA rules, we took him out of the 110, and same way with Donovan Leary. It's just kind of standard process when a guy can't participate. So we could go back to full roster on Saturday of 118 players, so we're at full roster. Luke, last night was kind of a modified early down practice, but it was 12 periods, and he was there the whole time. Didn't have any problems, didn't have any issues. I think the combination of Luke, Tip, and the other guys had a really good camp as Mike Marquez. I'm excited to see that tight end group because all three of those guys are a little bit different. And you throw in Griffin Moore, who's playing really good football. Griffin had a kind of an uptick about week 3 of fall camp, and he has been riding a rodeo that's been pretty good. I told him whatever you're sleeping in, whatever you're eating for breakfast, stay with that because it's running in the right direction. So I'm excited to see all those guys, and then I think Henry Boyer will play for us at tight end as well this year.
Just to follow, Luke is available. He will play.
Oh yeah.
Do you have an update on Ben Miller? Will he be here?
Yeah.
Game day? What's his situation?
Yeah. So I think we kind of gave a little bit of an update. Ben got some really good news during the course of the summer. Things were going in the right direction. But when I made the decision to transition with Sean, right, that basically put Sean in that special teams coordinator role for the entire fall, right? We didn't want to have Ben. He's with us quite a bit. I was with him for about an hour and a half this morning on a Zoom call, and then he and I met individually after that. He's doing some things that kind of more of an analyst type role, right? Like he can't coach. He is not performing coaching duties. He is allowed to stay on recruiting, which is what we basically meet about. Because of the NCAA, I was able to replace him physically on the field as a coach, but we could keep him alive in a recruiting role. That's what his capacity is, and everything's been very, very positive as of late. But projected, we probably won't be able to, if everything goes well, wouldn't be able to have him back in our midst as a normal guy until October, November. So we'll just wait till after the year.
Brett, obviously, what you do on the field will impact attendance. But what is your hope for what the fans will show up this year? What's it mean to your program, your players, and recruiting?
Yeah, I've learned this through my years as a head coach, right? Like I obviously don't have the ticket manager title in my resume, but I realize very, very much, and I remind our players and our coaches every day that people will come and support what they're proud of, right, and what they enjoy watching. So even though I'm not directly in charge of ticket sales, I am directly responsible for, I think, what kind of crowd we get, right? Because the product we put on the field is what I think people want to be proud of. They want to come and see something that's entertaining. I think, not revealing too much, but offensively, defensively, and special teams, I think this will be an environment and a game that people will be excited to watch. I think we got some dynamic skill players offensively. Every rule that comes down the pipe now is designed to make more plays happen offensively and allow people to score more points. I'm a former defensive guy that says that with a grin, but I think part of the reason I like this team is I like watching them compete. I like watching them play, and I think that can be a direct indicator to our ticket sales, really. And I've talked to numerous groups. I literally just had a Zoom call with some great supporters that are hugely responsible from the way our building is built to the rooms that are in it and several other things in the athletic department. And I've told them the same message I've told if I'm talking to a group of local people maybe haven't given a dollar, right? Like we played our best football when we were on the road in front of big crowds. I think last year when we played in that Nebraska game, we were really willed in the second half to play well because of the crowd and the environment they saw, and it's it was only at about maybe a half to 2/3 of the capacity of what it can be. I've been in this stadium on the other sideline when it's roaring full go, so I know how great it can be. And if we can get to a point where we can fill Memorial Stadium because of the product we're putting on the field, we'll be in a great spot.
Yeah, when you start off and you talk about, there's a lot of buzz and doesn't mean wins. Let me tell you, if you don't win, the buzz goes away. So you got to win some games here, and I think that's going to be a key for him moving forward. He needs to show some more success. I mean, 5 wins last year was nice, and you need to advance. And it starts by winning these early games that I think are very winnable against teams like Wyoming.
Yeah, he's got to give people, and I say he, I mean the team, has to give people faith that they can convert some of those games that quote were shouldas into did. And that's kind of the thing that Illinois athletics needs right now is on the football field to win the games that you have a chance to win and not have to have the coach try to explain away what happened. And the other thing is that if you lose, then you get some Illini fans are going to respond with way too strong of a buzz, and that's not going to be good either. So,
yeah, we want good buzz. We want good buzz.
Exactly. We want good buzz, not buzz.
That's right. Yeah, and I mentioned it last week and the time before. I mean, I agree. I don't know if 4-0 is possible, but boy, if you could go into October and that date at Wisconsin at 4-0, and you're getting maybe a couple of votes in the rankings, which let's face it, that has not happened for Illinois in over a decade. Maybe then you get that momentum and you get the people coming out. It's got to become a destination thing where you've got on your calendar to make sure that you get to the game and support the Illini on the field. We'll hear more from Bielema in just a bit. And again, this segment presented by Busey Bank. Up next, football writer and analyst Matt Stevens from the Illini Guys with his preview after this. IlliniGuys.com, free 7-day trial to get all the inside info, expert analysis, and some spirited and usually tame conversation in our message forums. They behave themselves for the most part on IlliniGuys.com, IlliniGuys.com. That's also how you get access to the great work by Matt Stevens, football writer and analyst. We just heard from Brett Bielema. Matt, it's that time of year when players, and we say it all the time, they are ready to get after it and go hit someone on another team for once.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of excitement in the building. I think that's what Brett Bielema was trying to, portray on Monday during the press conference. And I think that inside the building, whether it's staff members, whether it's assistant coaches, or whether it's the 118, I think, players that are on the roster this year, there are a lot. There's a buzz circulating around the building. Now the university just kind of has to get that buzz circulating outside the building. And the way you do that is you start playing other teams and putting up W's. And that's kind of the objective here for week 0 and probably the month of September for Illini football.
Matt, you obviously have a unique insight in that you not only get to talk to players and coaches, but you also get to talk to the other beat writers. I have a question. What's the buzz among the other beat writers? I mean, what are their thoughts on this team this year?
I think there was a calming of the idea that this was going to be a significant drop off from last year's team simply because all the COVID guys are gone. Like, I think that was the prevailing theme heading into the spring. I think what you got in the fall was that, this team's talented enough to get off to a start that could, jumpstart them for the rest of the year. But there are a lot of questions on this team that I think everybody, myself included among that beat, are just trying to get answered. And when we don't have the access that we don't get in the preseason, we show up just like you guys are going to on August 27th at 3:00, trying to answer some of those questions. And a lot of them exist on the offensive side of the ball. Some of them are on defense, but this is also sometimes not the opponent you want to answer these questions against, because, a team like Wyoming has a tendency to have that be, that to their advantage when they have a system, they know who they are. And I'm not sure we know exactly what this Illinois football team is going to look like in 2022. Not 100%.
So when you show up to the game, it's going to be Going to be
Sure.
3 o'clock. You know, we're all ready for kickoff. Memorial Stadium is rocking. The students are ready to go.
yeah. I think
What's
if I show
the
up at 3,
question?
you guys might fire me, but go ahead.
Yeah. Well, we'll give you 258. But
Sure.
what's the question? What's the one question that you want answered as you sit down that you're going to be paying attention to trying to figure it out?
What does this offense look like? And what do I mean by that is what personnel are they in a majority of the time? And how fast do they want to go? And how much do they want to go that fast? If that makes any sense, and I wrote about it earlier last week that Barry Lunny grew up and actually got drafted into Major League Baseball as a pitcher. And so he knows something about changing speeds. And I think that that's what he's kind of been known for as an offensive coordinator, is not exactly doing like the Chip Kelly thing, which is just go, 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 all gas, no brakes. Barry kind of believes in the idea of changing the pace and making defenses, play to your tempo, and you dictate the pace. Again, like a pitcher in a baseball game, you control the tempo of how this game's going to go. And I think that he needs to get his offense and the guys on his offense to understand how that's going to go. And I think, quite frankly, I think him being on the field instead of up in the box like Tony Peterson was last year is going to be a major help in that regard of just kind of getting plays in and getting the rhythm, especially in those first couple of quarters against Wyoming, exactly the way he wants it.
Yeah, talking with Matt Stevens here, IlliniGuys.com. And Matt, you mentioned that in the article you wrote a few days ago about the coordinators actually being on the sideline than the press box. Take us into that. Is that a thing now that's more of a thing? How unusual is it? And what advantage do you think it gives Barry Lunny and Ryan Walters to be there on the field as opposed to upstairs?
It's from my experience, Larry, it's actually very unusual in the sense that usually one coordinator has the bird's eye view, whether that's and it's usually the opposite expertise of the head coach. In my experience, Dan Mullen always had his defensive coordinator actually on the field, but his offensive coordinator, and we all know that Dan was in charge of the offense, but his offensive coordinator had the bird's eye view that Dan couldn't see. So it's interesting to me that Brett's a defensive guy and Ryan Walters is still going to be on the field, but I think it's beneficial because of what Brett's personality is. And I think he wants to, I know they're all 10 guys are going to be on headset throughout the game. That hasn't changed for years. What changes for me is that I think Brett Bielema wants to be able to look his two coordinators in the eye and get an answer and be able to talk to them face to face. I think that's important to him. I think it's important to Barry Lunny, who's, I've said it before, at heart, I think Barry's always going to be like his dad, who's a high school coach. So being on the field is just natural to him. And Ryan Walters tried the box thing, and then 42-14 at Virginia happened. And he's like, I'm not dealing with this very well. I need to be down in the box. And I actually talked to Kevin Kane about it, who actually does have the bird's eye view for the defense last year and this year. And he sat next to Ryan Walters for those first 3 games. He's like, dude, you need to be somewhere else. Like, this isn't working for them and it's not working for you. So I think personality wise, it fits all 3 of those guys, including Sean Snyder, who, is just like his dad and needs that field perspective. And I think it'll provide the players with a comforting role coming off the sideline and immediately getting feedback instead of having to, the quarterback's always had to go to the phone. I don't think that Barry Lunny will allow that to be the case. So he'll get a, face-to-face conversation with those guys.
All right, Matt, time to put you on the spot. Illinois, Wyoming, give it to me. What's the result?
I think Illinois covers. I think they're 10-point favorite at home. I think they cover just barely, but I think they cover. Wyoming's got too many holes and too many inexperienced players on offense, quite frankly, and on defense. For this to be their first game and on the road in I would say, a hostile environment, I think it's actually going to be a neutral environment more than a hostile environment in this opener. But I think that Illinois has the ability to make it with their defense, has an ability to allow their offense to kind of get some momentum and get their feet under them. And I think Illinois wins by 10, maybe 11 points.
Okay. Matt Stevens of IlliniGuys.com. Many thanks to you, my friend.
Not a problem.
National championship winning coaches signing new deals to do very different things. That's on the way. Listening to the Sports Spectacular, powered by IlliniGuys.com. Larry Smith, Mike Hagley, Brad Sturdy here in week 0 on the college football calendar. Illinois hosting Wyoming, and before that, Nebraska and Northwestern from Ireland. The only 2 games on the Big Ten calendar, and we'll have more on both games coming up in just a bit. But some other things looking around, peeking out from around our world. Nick Saban in the news this week, still going, and once again, Kirby Smart move over. It's Nick Saban who once again is the highest paid.
Well, when you're the GOAT, you get paid the most. I guess
right.
that's the way it works. Saban, 8 years through 2030, he'll be like 78 years old or something when this ends or something. It's crazy. I mean, eventually, when's it enough? I mean, I don't know. When's he going to retire and enjoy to go fishing and golfing? I don't know. But it's crazy. I mean, he deserves it. I mean, when you look at anybody who deserves the contract, he's been the most successful college football coach in history.
Yeah, and when you are as good as he is, and you make $11 million doing something that you're really good at, why not keep getting people to pay you $11 million to be good? It's hard to argue, if he can do it till he's 93 and put the national title record so far out of reach that John Wooden wouldn't think of it. Why not?
Yeah, it's like us, for $11, we do this radio show.
Cash? Cash?
No, you'll get it later.
Okay.
It's an IOU, Mike.
Scary. Here's what's scary. Nick Saban makes almost $1 million a game to coach. I mean, that's just
good.
in the college game. That's great.
It's a good wage if you can get it.
Yeah.
Well, and he makes just almost $1 million more per game than I do for covering them.
Exactly. Almost. Another coach in the news this week, Urban Meyer. He also has won a national title years ago with Ohio State. Of course, he had the debacle in Jacksonville. We won't talk about returning to the Fox Sports booth. And I think he did a great job on Fox when he was there before.
Yeah, I think he was better on Fox than he was in the bar. I mean, in Jacksonville. So he was definitely better there. So the pro game didn't work out for Urban. Let's be honest though. If Urban ever wants to come back to college, he'd be successful. Yeah. The guy's good.
What I love is how, you talk about hiding it under a bushel. Well, Fox, their announcement was like, Urban Meyer, it's going to be coming. I mean, it was like the announcement that never was. And so it's like, he's really good at what he does, but we don't really want to have a big conversation about it. So there we are.
We'll have other things to talk about with them. We don't want to talk about him. We don't want to talk about his.
Albert Pujols just just been fantastic as he passes Stan Musial this week for second on the all. What a final year for the future Hall of Famer.
Pujols been great. He's 690, 693, 690, somewhere in that range. And, I'd love to see him get 700 home runs this year. That would be fantastic. I think going into this year, I didn't think he was going to be able to do it because, just the way it works. He hadn't hit that many and he needed, I think it was 21 or something coming in. So the thing about him is clearly when Juan Ponce de Leon was looking for the Fountain of Youth, he was looking in Florida. It was the Mississippi River in St. Louis because he hit the Fountain of Youth, baby.
Yeah, it has been tremendous the last week or so. You feel like, did somebody get Albert Pujols out of a time machine from 2005 and drop him in? Because, I mean, he's hitting home runs that you're just like, yeah, that's gone. These are not like creep over the top. He swings the bat and he knows it's somewhere in orbit.
I think the Angels may be wondering, like, okay, where were you? The last time really? Are you kidding me? What's up with this? Albert Pujols.
Same with that Yankees pitcher that they got too, who all of a sudden couldn't play well for the Yankees, turns into Tom Seaver for the Cardinals.
Something about St. Louis. Something about I don't know.
Leclerc. It's got to be that Mississippi mud.
Yeah.
It is. It's all good, baby.
Pierre Leclerc had some secret he buried there along the banks, and they found it. You're exactly right. Speaking of home runs, how about the season Aaron Judge is having on the other side of the age spectrum? But I won't say quietly because he's had a fantastic year and he's picked up the pace again. But he's got a shot now to set the American League record for home runs, to break Maris's 61.
Yeah, Judge, before the season, he went through all those contract negotiations. He turned down a load of money. I mean, he bet on himself, and he's producing. I mean, he came in, you had 60 home runs after betting on yourself. That's saying, all right, Yankees, now you didn't want to give me what I wanted back then. Now you're going to have to pay even more. So there's a premium on Aaron Judge right now, and he bet on himself, and he said, I'm going to show you.
Yeah, and let's face it, you've got the biggest fishbowl in the world there, the most pressure you can get of any baseball team, and he's responding to it by crushing it. So every dollar he earns, you got to just tip your hat and say, well done, well done.
Well, and why not wait and see what the market is, to your point? If you feel you're worth more than that, look around and see what some of these other guys, what they're signing for. And I mean, we may be talking here in 6 months about or 3 or 4 months here about a $500 million contract for Aaron Judge. It is the Yankees, it is New York, and he is Aaron Judge. So, yep, lots of stuff going on. We've got more on the way after a quick timeout. Stay with us right here. This Game Changer segment presented by OSF Healthcare. Brett Bielema felt he needed to change things up on offense after last season. Out was Tony Peterson. In is Barry Lunny Jr., most recently the offensive coordinator for Texas San Antonio, but he spent several years with Arkansas. So who is Barry Lunny Jr. and what does he bring? Well, for some insight, we wanted to go to the source. Mike Irwin is a reporter and analyst for Pig Trail Nation in Arkansas, covering the Arkansas Razorbacks. So, Mike, welcome to the Sports Spectacular. And I got to start off by asking, what is Pig Trail Nation? Tell me how that came to be.
Yeah, the Pig Trail is a 2-lane stretch of blacktop, very winding through the Ozark Mountains. And if you go back far enough, the 30s, the 40s, it was the main road that people from Central Arkansas took to get up to games here. Very dangerous road. They haven't used it for a long time. There's interstates now all the way, but it was the Pig Trail, and I have no idea who came up with that idea to call us that, but that's the Pig Trail is that road. And every hog fan knows what the Pig Trail is.
We got a little knowledge today.
We always think of when I think of the hogs and the pig trails, I'm thinking of, I go back to Washington Redskins with the hogs. And I think that's what Brett Bielema wants from his offensive line. He loves those big hogs, but how is Barry Lunny going to be a little different maybe than that? Are they going to open it up a little bit? What do you see from him?
I was just looking at the press conference from 2 days ago, and Bielema, I guess, was talking about the lack of access. And he said, look, there's a reason for that. Everyone will find out what our offense will be when we start the game. So I'm not sure. I know what Bielema ran here, which was kind of a version of bully ball, which Sam Pittman likes. Lunny, of course, went with Jeff Traylor when Chad Morris was fired. Traylor was the running backs coach, and he became the head coach at UT San Antonio. He took Lunny with him, who had been the tight ends coach. And they ran a very wide open offense there. What he's going to do now, I have no idea. But I do know that he he coached with his dad at Bentonville, which is just north of here. They won, I think, 3 state championships. They were a run pass balance team, but they ran a tempo offense and they threw it a lot. I'm just going to guess and say it's going to be a little bit of what Brett likes and a lot of what Lunny likes.
Now, does he do a lot of the tempo type of things? Because we hear about that a lot when they're talking today.
Yeah, I think he did at UT San Antonio. Again, I'd have to watch their practice, which apparently you can't do to have any idea how that will work. But, he's a very measured person. Bielema was talking about him in that press conference, said he doesn't say anything that's not planned out. And that is correct. I've known him since probably 1990, his junior year in high school. He won 2 state championships down there at Fort Smith Southside, 1990-91. And then he was the starting quarterback midway through his freshman year and engineered Arkansas's first big upset in the SEC. That was their first year in the league. And they went down to Knoxville at 1-4 in the season. And Tennessee was number 4 in the nation. And they put Lunny in as starting quarterback. He's a left-handed quarterback. and he pulled off the upset. And he developed a reputation in his time here of winning big games on the road. They beat Georgia the next year at Georgia. They beat Alabama, Arkansas's first win in Tuscaloosa when he was a senior. He threw a touchdown pass with about 6 seconds left to win that game. And then that was the first SEC championship game Arkansas made it into. So his time here as a player was very successful. He was an offensive coordinator at Tulsa, went to San Jose State, but came back home to work for his dad for several years. And then Brett Bielema hired him as the tight ends coach. He was here Bielema's entire time, and then 2 years with Chad Morris, and then he went to UT San Antonio.
So he's somebody you really have known for a long time. Did you see the coaching side in him when he was a star player? Could you predicted this kind of outcome?
Sure. His dad won 7 state championships in this
Wow.
state.
Okay.
He's a great guy, and I know him very well. And Barry's a lot like him. And you know, Barry Sr. was kind of an innovative guy. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's done. You know, what a lot of people probably don't know is Barry Lunny Jr. almost got this job when Chad Morris was fired. I think the fact that he'd never been a head coach hurt him a little bit, but I think the athletic director wanted to hire him. The board balked, and so they ended up with Sam Pittman. But he almost got this job. And I think he will, if he's successful at Illinois, he'll be a head coach in his next job. I'm fairly sure.
Oh, that's exciting. So he's got coaching in his blood. You always like those guys that you're in that coaching fraternity. Is it what's the personality like? You know, we get to see him like in interviews and things like that. We haven't really got to see him on a sideline. Is it a calm, measured approach? Is he going to be a little fire and brimstone at times? What are we going to see on the sideline?
He's pretty low key, and he does his coaching that way too. You don't see him yelling at guys. His approach. And this was the tight ends that I talked to because he coached there several years, coached the tight ends. But they always told me that his attitude was, you didn't come here to sit on the bench, to not play. And if you don't do the things I ask you to do, that's where you'll be. You'll be on the bench. So it's up to you. I'm not going to fool with you. If you do what you need to do, you'll be on the field. You may not be a starter, but I'll get you out there. If you don't do what I'm asking you to do, you will sit there. So you make the decision. He didn't feel like he had to yell at anybody. It was just, I'm going to apply logic, and you decide what you want to do. And then if you kept doing it, you weren't on the team anymore.
So what kind of risk manager is he? Because we're obviously not expecting, Mike Leach, but there's some fans here in Champaign who would love to see a little bit more, let's say, spice in the offense.
Well, if you watch what he did at UT San Antonio, certainly he was that. Now, the issue is what will Bielema do? And I don't know. I was around Brett for the entire time he was here, and he ran a very conservative offense while he was here. What he wanted to do was get a 10-point lead in the third quarter and sit on it, play bully ball. He did that. I've seen him do it at Texas Tech. I think it was his third year, maybe second year he was here. They had a 10-point lead coming out of the dressing room. Texas Tech had 3 offensive possessions in the second half, 9 plays, 3 3-and-outs. And Arkansas ran it was like a 7-minute drive, an 8-minute drive, a 9-minute drive. It was all 4 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 5 yards, 4 yards. It was really boring, but it was amazing when it was over what they were able to do in controlling. Now, that's Brett Bielema. He got himself in a little bit of trouble. I think it was his third year here. He had a bad first year because his quarterback separated his shoulder, and they didn't really have an adequate backup. I think they won 3 or 4 games that year. But the second year went to a bowl game, beat Texas in the Texas Bowl. And then he went down later on, maybe that next spring, into a coaching convention in Texas. And at that time, and even today, these Texas high school coaches were all wide open. And he, in a coaching convention, told them, I'll take my 2 tight ends and stick them up your rear end. And that didn't fly very well. And a lot of fans were angry. It was like, what are you doing? You're trying to recruit that state and you're making those coaches mad. But that was what he did here. I don't know what he's going to do there. I didn't watch Illinois last year, so I don't know what kind of offense they ran. And it wouldn't matter anyway, because it's obviously going to change. But How it's going to change, I don't know.
Talking with Mike Irwin here on the Game Changer segment presented by OSF Healthcare. Mike, as we mentioned, is a reporter and analyst for Pig Trail Nation, covering Arkansas Razorbacks for a very long time. This guy, if you want to know Razorbacks history, he's going to have that. You're just saying, I'm talking about, again, some background here on Barry Lunny Jr., but talking about Brett Bielema, he was down there for a few years. You just, admitted that you didn't watch Illinois last year. Illinois, I don't know if you followed, there hasn't been much to watch for the most part for 30 years. It's been a struggle. And Bielema came in really, we've said it, and we're just being brutally honest, scorched earth. I mean, he's starting from square one, and they did rebound late in the big road wins over ranked teams late in the season in October with Penn State and at Minnesota in November. What was his tenure like there? And if he hadn't kind of made this mistake, I mean, do you think he would have had a little more success and wouldn't have been out, or what was your opinion of him when he was down in Fayetteville?
Came in and had a really rough first year. Most people realized it wasn't his fault. Didn't have an adequate backup quarterback. He hadn't been here long enough to recruit for that. And the second year, when they went to a bowl game and when they beat Texas, he won the fans over. Next year, they won 7 games that year. They went 7-6. The next year, they went 8-5 and won the Liberty Bowl, beat Kansas State. I would say at that point, people loved him. But he had some issues with his assistant coaches. He lost Sam Pittman. I think there was a defensive linebackers coach maybe that left, and he did not replace those coaches with the coach of similar ability. And the next 2 years just kind of went south on him, and he had 2 losing seasons and he got fired. Good guy. We all liked him. Loved the press conferences. Felt like he was always honest with us. I just think a lot of people felt like he got ahead of himself. He had those 2 good years. People were happy. Okay, that they're happy now. Maybe I can relax a little bit, and you just never can relax. Not in the SEC. The other thing is, I always felt like he was a little bit out of his element in this league. Big Ten, very different. He'd been very successful at Wisconsin, and I think he'll be happier where he is now. I mean, I've been to Champaign many times. My great-grandfather worked there as a court reporter for the Illinois Supreme Court. I mean, he lived there. He didn't work there. But he had a permanent residence there. My dad was born there. My grandfather was born there. I've been there when I was a kid many, many times, and it's a great place, and I think he'll like it there. He himself is from Illinois, so I think he'll be a lot happier, and I think he'll do well there.
Mike, you mentioned you didn't get to see Illinois' offense last year. Neither did any of us. We didn't get to see Illinois' offense either. So that's why we have a new offensive coordinator, right? I mean, that's the way it usually goes in these things. So, and I want to go back to Barry Lunny Jr. a little bit. So we kind of have a feel for, he's kind of a laid back guy, but he's an analytical guy as a coach. What's he like as a recruiter? What's his recruiting style, and was he effective at recruiting at the places at Arkansas, for example?
Well, what they did with him because of his Arkansas ties, and Bielema comes in from the outside. Immediately, he wants at least some guys on his staff that know Arkansas, know how to recruit the state. The philosophy has always been here: get the best 6, maybe 7 players a year out of the state. Then you go into Texas and get 3 or 4. You go into Louisiana and get a couple. You go into Missouri and get some guys. Oklahoma. Different coaches have stretched it into other areas. Bielema had some ties to Florida when he first came here. But Lunny basically had Arkansas, and he moved on into Oklahoma too, and he recruited very well. I just think parents know that he's a good guy. He comes across like a good guy. I think the fact that his dad was a coach impresses parents, and he's not flashy. He doesn't try to, he's not going to try to bamboozle you with his personality. He's just straight up, and I think people appreciate that. So he was a good recruiter here.
So that leads to a logical question then. Are there any really good recruits, particularly in the defensive line or quarterback, that are in Arkansas that we can unleash Mr. Lunny on?
If there are some and he thinks he can get them, he'll be here. I haven't heard that he's come back into the state, but, he certainly would come here if he thought he had a shot. And look, his dad knows a lot of people. He knows a lot of people. I'm assuming that if he's there for 2 or 3 years, he will bring some players out of Arkansas to that program.
Yeah, the drive isn't that bad up there. It's not too bad. It's not
No,
all.
it's not too far.
Yeah, it's not too far.
I mean, you go up and get on I-44 and go through St. Louis, and you're almost there, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. That's right. Well, we can't let you go before we ask about the Razorbacks this year. And as you mentioned, SEC football is always just exciting year in, year out, so competitive, especially the West. What do you expect out of the Hogs?
Well, Sam Pittman was considered one of the worst hires in the country at the time he was hired because he'd never been a head coach. And people were like, what are you doing? And, the athletic director, Hunter Yurachek, said, look, he's good. And they had that all SEC schedule that first year, the COVID year, and it was the toughest schedule in the country. They played Georgia and Alabama. Yeah. And Georgia wasn't supposed to be on the schedule, but they added them because you got 2 more SEC games that year. And they won 3 games. Look, 3 SEC games. Chad Morris never won an SEC game. So Arkansas had gone 2 years without a single SEC win. So they got 3 that year. And then last year they finished tied for 3rd in the SEC West and, won 5 conference games. And so 9 games overall. I think fans are excited. I mean, this guy knows how to lead. And I can tell you just what I've seen from camp so far. You've got an established starting quarterback coming back that made big plays last year. When you have that, you have a shot because it all starts and ends with your quarterback.
We were just talking about Nick Saban earlier in the show, and so I got to ask a question. What's the thought on Nick Saban? Is he going to coach until he's like 100 years old? Is that the plan? He just signed another 8-year extension. I mean, how long is he going to be at Alabama?
Yeah, I think he may stay through the end of that extension. He just he's got the best job in America and he's the best coach in America. So I guess he wants to keep doing it. Maybe he realizes that Bear Bryant, stepped down and died about 2 months later. Right. And so he doesn't want to go through that. I don't know.
Well, or playing Illinois did it to him. There's a reason for Coach Saban to keep Illinois off the schedule.
Yeah, right.
One real quick question for you. How is Arkansas in basketball landing all these big recruits? They really have went crazy the last 12 months.
This is another one of those Yurachek hires. He fired Mike Anderson, who was a popular coach here, but and he wasn't bad. They wanted better. And thought he could get Kelvin Sampson, and then Sampson turned the job down. I think he got offered a situation where his son would be the coach in waiting, and he decided to stay at Houston. And then I'm hearing this Eric Musselman, and I have no idea who this guy is. Nobody knew. And so he comes in here, and the guy's a tornado. That's all I can tell you. He's all over social media, he's all over Twitter. He's doing crazy things all the time, recruits out the wazoo. Even Nolan didn't recruit the way this guy does. I mean, he's probably got at least the number 2 or 3 recruiting class this year on this team. And then he's already moving in that direction next year. So we watched him in Europe. They went and played 4 games in Europe, and this is a very talented team.
He's an outstanding coach. Mike, we will leave it there. Thanks so much for your time and the insights, and great to spend some time with you and get to know the Illinois coaches a little better through you and your experience.
Yeah, I enjoyed it, guys, and good luck. I hope you guys have a good year.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
My grandpa was a fan, so he hasn't been around in a long time, but he would be pulling for him for sure.
Perfect.
We could feel the orange and blue love coming up from Arkansas. Thanks so much, Mike Irwin. Again, we appreciate it. Thanks for the knowledge in this segment presented by OSF Healthcare. We need to pay some bills and then back with more. This is the Sports Spectacular, powered by IlliniGuys.com. Larry Smith, Brad Sturdy, Mike Kegley. As we mentioned, the Big Ten takes center stage this weekend with a pair of games. Nebraska was supposed to play Illinois and Ireland last August, but that game was moved to Champaign due to COVID. The Huskers lost the Illini in that one. Illinois at home versus Wyoming this time this weekend. The Huskers have made it to Europe as they had planned a year ago, but instead they are now playing, guys, Big Ten rival Northwestern.
Yeah, it's an interesting game because Northwestern was surprisingly, I guess both these teams were surprisingly bad last year. But Nebraska did thump Northwestern when they played head to head. So it's going to be interesting to see which team is going to be the bounce back team. Because I think one of them could be a team that bounces back and is better than expected this year. That's been the Pat Fitzgerald modus operandi here at Northwestern. Lose big, win big, lose. I mean, just back and forth.
Yeah, you got Fitzy's kind of the rubber band man. You know, you don't know exactly which way he's going to snap, but it can be really exciting or really. But and on Scott Frost's side, you know, you have to wonder because again, on paper, this team looks like the clear better team than Northwestern, and the styles certainly seem to favor them based on last year's result. So put your money on Northwestern. I don't know.
I'm just laughing at the rubber band man. What is he, a Spinners fan? Is that what you're talking about?
I think he is.
Snaps back, wash after wash.
Yeah, Nebraska. Thank you. Nice. Yeah, you're from the 70s. You know that.
Yeah.
Nebraska this week naming Casey Thompson, the transfer from Texas, as their starting quarterback. So, you know, I think these kid who's got a lot of talent. You know, Martinez is now gone. Is he an upgrade? I mean, we'll wait and see here with this game starting again. And that's a 12:30 kickoff, as we've mentioned. And that game will be seen on Fox. And on the other side, you mentioned Nebraska, and you know, you're getting your team together. The last thing you want to do is say something that's going to create some controversy or distract the program or the media or anybody else. But Scott Frost did that this week when he talked about his offensive line coach is working his guys so well that the guys vomit, and this is a quote, probably 15 to 20 times a day. There are a lot of jokes there. None of them are appropriate, so I'm not going to say them. So, Mike, when you heard that, what was your thought?
Well, you know, I've never heard bulimia as a recruiting tactic. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, as a coach, you're like, yeah, you know, our head coach did say you're going to throw up a lot, but it's really not true. You're just going to throw up a normal amount. I mean, what's normal throwing up for offensive linemen? I don't know. I mean, I'm thinking Coach B is sitting here going, okay, I got a list, you know, or Coach, you know, Fitzy's like, I know we've got 1,000 things we can talk about next time there's an offensive lineman that wants to go to Nebraska. I don't know, Brad,
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, okay, as a coach, every coach has had that where you've had that kid puke, and you're kind of like, okay, now we've somebody puked, you know, it's like now it's a party, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've all had that. We've all had that happen when we're coaching. And so it's always interesting. I think this was, you know, the fact that he was criticized by people and things like, it's obvious he was just exaggerating, trying to make it, you know, show how tough his offensive line coach is and how tough his offensive linemen were. It was just kind of a joke taken away out of context. It was kind of funny. I mean, but here's the thing. We know it was stupid. We know it wasn't true. Nobody's vomiting 15 to 20 times a day. So, not a big deal, but it's funny.
Coach Frost does not calculate every word that comes out of his mouth. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. He's definitely not Nick Saban, is he? With the media.
Well, and on the other side, maybe it was intentional because we're talking about the vomit comment and not maybe.
I guess that's how you can get Nebraska in the mainstream. Hey, let's talk about vomiting. At least he didn't say they're getting diarrhea, so I guess it's an upgrade.
Thank God.
Would have been even worse.
Right.
Yeah, like that drug commercial where they sing diarrhea. You know, it's like, come on. And I do think though, I guess
I don't want to think about that.
The bottom line is we haven't mentioned the fact that this is a must-win situation for Scott Frost in game one because of the vomit comment. So hey. First point goes to Coach Frost.
There you go.
If they lose, how many writers the headline is going to be? Nebraska makes us want to puke.
Yeah. Hey, but as far as that commercial goes, they say diarrhea as if they are, Boys to Men or, the
Yeah.
guys. So, it's yeah. So at least it sounds good. Makes it seem like it's not a bad thing. Hey, but you know what? I heard this next story, and it did make me want to. Rutgers football having all kinds of financial problems, and the story comes out that they last year spent $450,000 on DoorDash. I mean, I know Mike goes about 10 grand on DoorDash a year. I know that. 450 grand on DoorDash.
That's a lot of DoorDash. A lot of DoorDash. I mean, that's more than Mike could eat at Papa Del's every day and that amount of DoorDash. So, I mean, he could live the dream.
I got to be honest.
From Champaign. They could DoorDash it from Champagne to Texas. And he would take.
So $450,000 annually makes me wonder if DoorDash is a cover for a whole different type of business.
What are you delivering exactly?
Are we gonna have this quickly evolve into a Patino situation?
Oh, God.
Oh, goodness gracious!
Sadly, are endless on this.
Yes, they are, and all you need to be is a good private eye, and who knows where this goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
It is interesting.
Yeah. I mean, that's like 40 grand a month, and that's assuming it's 12 months. That is a lot of cash. Rutgers, here's an idea. Ramen noodles. They're real quick. Right there in the microwave. They cost you nothing, and you can save some cash. All right. Stay with us. We've got much more ahead. Hold it down. It's okay. After this. Continue here on the Sports Spectacular, powered by IlliniGuys.com. Larry, Mike, and Brad, joined by a very special guest to get the perspective on the other side. Ian McMacken of GoWyoGo.com. It's the rival site for the Wyoming Cowboys. He's been at this for 20 years. I mean, he looks like he's 20. So, I mean, he must have been a child prodigy before he got started. He's got that baby face.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, man. Thanks for joining us in the Sports Spectacular. Hey, tell us about the Wyoming Cowboys. I mean, we don't, and over here in Illinois, Big Ten country, we don't get a chance to go out west very often. Tell us about Wyoming.
Yeah, you guys be on the Big Ten conference. You're probably not as familiar with the Mountain West. We're not on the huge national profile, obviously, type conference, but we are a conference that has some pretty good football teams in it. And Wyoming was actually this time last year was considered one of the most experienced football teams in the country. In fact, I think ESPN had us maybe the number one stability. I don't know if you guys remember, they came out that big rating of all the college football programs in the country. And Coach Bull obviously has been there. He's entering his 9th year, and he's kind of a stable type of coach. He was at Nebraska. He's coached around, the Wisconsin assistant coach. But this year, the team is due to graduation and transfers is not nearly as experienced as last year. And there's a lot more unknowns at the position. The quarterback position is a big question mark with the new quarterback. Definitely going to be a new quarterback this year. It looks like it's going to be the transfer from Utah State, Andrew Peasley, though Coach Bull did not actually come out and say that at his press conference today. He's kind of doing the same thing the Illinois coach is doing, not making the official announcement. I don't know if they're doing gamesmanship there against each other, but Peasley, I think Andrew Peasley is going to be in the quarterback, but really short. Wyoming is a younger football team this year. Coach Bull feels there is some talent in the program, younger talent that could really make a name for themselves this year, but really won't know until they hit the field and start playing some football games.
Yeah, Illinois is also a team that has a lot of new faces, but it sounds like Wyoming has really new faces in young faces too. They're guys who haven't maybe had that experience. But what are your thoughts on the talent level? I mean, the coach says talent. What are your thoughts on the talent level? Do you feel like they have that talent to compete at the against the Big Ten team coming up?
Well, I think in an initial game, I think potentially they do. I think there's some talent on this football program. I think Coach Bull in his 9th year has done a pretty good job recruiting to Wyoming. Wyoming's always been, talented enough to be competitive in the Mountain West Conference. In fact, last year, I think we had like 18 guys in the NFL on our, NFL rosters from this program. So Wyoming does a little bit differently because we're not going to go out and get a lot of 4 or 5 star recruits, but they do a good job of evaluating talent. And then they are able to develop this talent. We had, of course, you guys know about Josh Allen, but you got Logan Wilson, the starting middle linebacker at Cincinnati right now. Chad Moom, a really important linebacker to the team last year, got drafted. He's going to be a big guy to replace. I think we're going to be able to replace him with Easton Gibbs as an upcoming linebacker. And so it's kind of a situation where I think he's recruited well, but we're going to have to see how that with all the young faces that don't have nearly as much experience, how they're going to be able to go in there and compete. And they did beat Missouri a couple of years ago in Laramie, so there is some ability on this team to go out and play some pretty good football at times.
And of course, as a longtime Cowboy fan, when I think of Wyoming, of course, I think of Jay Novacek. So that's cool. But we don't need any Jay Novacek.
Yeah,
style.
Jay Novacek's definitely an icon from Wyoming, along with some names. Maybe you guys don't remember some of these guys, but Fennis Dembo, a basketball player, played back in the late '80s.
Yes,
but,
we remember
Jay
him.
is definitely an icon in Wyoming, and he's in the College Football Hall of Fame. So that should say something about what he accomplished.
So how do you think this Wyoming defense is going to stack up against the Illini run game?
Well, that's going to be interesting. They've been solid defensively under Bull through most of his tenure, and they got 2 pretty good defensive tackles with experience of really beginning to evolve, in Jordan Bertinelli, and the other guy is Cole Goodbow. He's from the Wisconsin area at a high school, but they feel real good about the defensive tackle. Now they had an upcoming defensive end that they're really excited about, Sebastian Harsh, but we found out today that he's not going to be available for the Illinois game, but he's an athletic defensive end. So they're a little concerned about the athleticism on the side and the experience on the defensive end of things. Again, they're replacing some pretty good players defensively. It's how it's going to translate, but like I said, they've been pretty good defensively. It's going to be interesting to see how they match up. This game on Saturday is really, to me, is just going to be very interesting because I just don't know what to expect at Wyoming come Saturday, how they're going to perform and how Illinois is going to perform in the game. But all I know is from the past that they've been pretty solid defensively.
We're looking as we're talking to Ian McMacken here. He's a publisher of GoWyoGo.com, the Wyoming rivals side. And of course, the Cowboys playing Illinois on Saturday. Brett Bielema last year played in week 0 and really liked it. Illinois at home opened against Nebraska, and the game that was going to be over in Ireland, and it was stayed home because of COVID, and got the win. So then he moves this game up to week 0. How unusual is it? And is Coach Craig Bohl of Wyoming, is he a fan, or he just went along with it because that's where the paycheck was?
I think it's probably some of the paycheck. I think he said today that he wants to, with non-conference is interesting because you play a variety of different types of programs. So Wyoming does want to play at least a couple, the Big 10, Pac-12, Big 12 type schools during the non-conference portion. But I think the paycheck had a little bit to do with it. Now, normally we are kind of in a situation at Wyoming where we get some home and homes occasionally. This is not going to be a home and home. It's going to be a game that is going to be just a one trip to Illinois. It's going to be the first matchup. But I think Coach Bohl likes the early schedule because we're going to get a couple bye weeks in the middle of the schedule to kind of make up for that a little bit. And you get that extra week of preparation. And he sounds like he feels like they're prepared and ready to go and ready to play.
So I put our Illinois beat writer at IlliniGuys.com, put him on the spot. So now I got to put you on the spot. What's your prediction for this game heading into it?
Well, I know a lot of the Wyoming fans aren't going into the season with a lot of excitement about the potential of the team. They're just hoping right now, but they might get mad at me if I picked against Wyoming. So I went on the last rival site, the Illinois rival site guy, and told him that Wyoming would win 24-23, but they're going to have to play a pretty good football game to have a chance to win, I believe. Mistake-free. They're going to have to be basically mistake-free to have a chance. So
I think that's fair. That's a fair analysis. Yeah. No problem with that.
I wouldn't go to the betting game with this.
But you got to
You guys might
keep
come
the
looking
base
for me.
happy. You got to keep the base happy. So
That's correct.
right. Ian, we will let you go. Ian McMacken, again, he's a publisher of the rival site for Wyoming, goyogo.com. Ian, great to meet you, have you on the show, and let's hopefully get together again soon.
Yeah, I hope so, guys. I appreciate the invite today.
Absolutely. Hey, thanks so much. Again, Ian McMacken, goyogo.com. If you want to read more about the Wyoming Cowboys before the game and even after, be sure of that. And by the way, those of you in Mattoon, you should know, of course, Drake Jeffries, as you guys know, former Mattoon Green Wave playing for the Cowboys, and what a great season he had in basketball last year. Hey, this is the Sports Spectacular. We're powered by IlliniGuys.com. But up next, it's the voice of the Illini, Brian Barnhart, stops in. That's next. Glad you're still with us here on the Sports Spectacular as we count down to kickoff. Football season is here. The Illini and Wyoming, 3 o'clock Central Time. You can see that game on the Big Ten Network. And, of course, you also can hear it on the Busey Network as well. And we are thrilled to have the voice of the Illini with us right now, starting his 21st season, Brian Barnhart. Brian, I mean, I hate to even say that because I know that we can't be that old. We began when we were like 10 years old, right?
Yeah, it is. It has gone really fast. And I run into students quite a bit when I speak to classes at the U of I, and they're like, oh, yeah, I grew up listening to you. And I'm like, no, wait a minute. I haven't been around that long, have I? And yeah, because you think about it, the kids that are in college now at the U of I were born about the time of the 05 roughly 05 Final Four run, I guess. I mean, that makes perfect sense now.
Oh, yeah, it's meant to be a compliment, but it's also a very sobering comment as well. Well, let's talk Illini football here. It's an exciting time, obviously, with what we've got going and year 2 of Brett Bielema. You know, I don't want to alter what you're about to say. So give me your thoughts on this team, you know, without me chiming in on where this team is right now.
Well, I think they're headed in the right direction. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I think that Brett Bielema showed last year. I mean, he took it in his first year, took a team that I don't know what people expected, how many wins they would get, but they were competitive in every game but about 2. I think the Wisconsin game really wasn't competitive. And then, of course, the Virginia game last year in Charlottesville was a blowout early. But other than that, they were in every football game. They were competitive down to the finish. They literally gave away 2 games. I think the Maryland game and the Purdue game, they gave away at the very end. And so, I mean, I think realistically, when you look back on it, they probably should have been in a bowl game last year. And again, had the 2 big wins at Minnesota and at Penn State along the way against ranked teams on the road. So I think that, you know, is a great foundation, a great starting point. The one thing that I think, you know, looking at this year is you don't have all the super seniors back. You've got to add some depth, I think, behind the frontline guys, which I think are really good. Guys like, you know, Palczewski on the offensive line and Pearl. And then, you know, you think Isaiah Williams is back for another year on offense, and great running backs in Brown and McCray. And I know this Lawfrey kid, they like him a lot from Gibson City, and Chase Hayden's still there. And then defensively, you know, Johnny Newton, you think Keith Randolph, you think some of these linebackers, Calvin Hart. You get in the secondary with Spoon, Witherspoon, and the other guys that are back there, you know, Sidney Brown. Those guys are great. I think they've got some really good frontline players. Do they have the depth, I guess, would be the big question behind those guys if you do have injuries. And you know, Larry, there are going to be injuries somewhere along the way. And you hope not, but they do happen. And how deep are they at those positions? Because they don't have all the super seniors and then younger guys behind them. So that would be one thing. And then how that offensive line comes together with 2 junior college transfers, potentially as starters. That's going to be interesting to follow. And I think the biggest thing for me, Larry, is as I look at them, Isaiah Williams is going to have a big year. I think he could have a breakout year. The question is, can you get him some help? You know, can you get a Casey Washington or a Hightower or Miller or somebody or a tight end, Tip Ryman or whoever, Luke Ford? Can you get some help for Isaiah Williams? Because teams are going to say, okay, Isaiah Williams, we're going to take you away. We're not going to let you have the ball. And Illinois' offensive coordinator, Barry Lunny, is going to have to figure out how to get the ball in his hands as many times as he can. But those are some of the key things I'm looking at. I think the team should be better. I think they will be better. The question is, can they get off to a good start in the month of September? And because October is a lot tougher sledding.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got, a couple of games at the end, you'd think you'd have a shot to win. So the key will be the start, the depth that I talked about. And the other thing for me, Larry, is Purdue's gotten better, with Jeff Brom. They won, they won 9 games last year. Minnesota's been winning 8, 9, 10, 11 games. Wisconsin is who they are. Iowa's who they are. Nebraska, you think at some point is going to get it turned around. So they could be better, but they got to keep up with the guys in the neighborhood, so to speak.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned injuries. One area we do know they have good depth is quarterback. And last year you had Brandon Peters. You had an injured, as we now know, we didn't know then, Art Sikowski. You've got 2 veteran guys. I think that will change things because, as you know, there were so many times with this offense that was very one-dimensional. And there were a lot of 3 and outs, and the defense had to come right back on the field again. And I think now, if you've got some balance, if you've got an offense that at least can stay on the field, and I think now, even if we're assuming Tommy DeVito going in here is going to be the starter, I think that's kind of the even though Brett's not going to say it, he's the guy. You've got, if something does happen to him, God forbid, you've got Art Sikowski coming up, who's a nice 1A right behind him that can kind of give you to keep this offense going.
Yeah, I don't think you can go wrong with either guy, depending who's out there. And Art is, we had him on the spring game because he was hurt, and he was fantastic.
Yeah.
And you could see why his teammates love him. They do love him and respect him. He's a born leader. DeVito has the same kind of characteristic of the two. They're both Jersey guys, and so I don't think you can go wrong with either guy out there. And that's a good position to be in. But just reading between the lines, I mean, DeVito's threw for 250. 3 touchdowns in the spring game, was very accurate, and Sikowski didn't play. So right there, he's got the leg up, you would think,
right,
depending on how they've done in camp. But like I say, I don't think you can go wrong with either guy. And you mentioned the running game. It's interesting. Chase Brown had 1,000 yards, as we know, and McCray had a lot of yards. But it was interesting with Chase Brown. There were several times last year, I think it was 71 times they counted, Chase was facing 8 men or more in the box, and he still averaged about 6 yards a carry in those situations. So teams last year, they didn't respect Illinois' passing game. They said, you're going to have to beat us through the air if you want to do that. And I think that's why Barry Lunny was brought in to correct that.
Yeah. And I think now you're right. If you can get just a little bit vertical, just a little, that opens things up along the line in the front 7, and Chase Brown could do some things. One other thing I want to, before I let you go, you mentioned about in terms of, again, getting out to a hot start. I think that's key. We just heard a few minutes ago, and we heard from Brett Bielema in his presser, and I know you were there for this as well earlier this week, talking about in terms of how important it was to get fans in the stadium. And he said, we played last year our best football on the road with loud stadiums. And I think that's where, boy, and I've said this on the show previously, I don't know if 4-0 is possible, but a 4-0 start or a 3-1 start would be huge getting into October and some of these other games, and really to help this momentum that you can kind of feel building all around campus and throughout central Illinois.
Yeah, you need to build that momentum. We just haven't been able to sustain it. And Brett Bielema talks about that all the time, sustain success. And you can see what he's done in his career and how he's done it. You know where he's headed. But, we need to win a couple of games at home, big games where there's expectations going in that you can win, and then you build on that momentum. And we just haven't been able to do that. Even the Wisconsin game a few years ago, nobody expected us to win. You went into the game, even diehard Illini fans, when McCourt kicked that game winner, went into the game thinking, let's just stay alive in this game. We have no chance. And then they wound up winning it. So, I think you got to, and like last year, you get the 9 overtime win at Penn State, and then you struggle against Rutgers at home the next week. I mean, you've got to get that momentum started, have sustained success. And I looked out from, my perch up in the Memorial Stadium on the 8th floor. If you go to the back, you can look out on lot 31 and 32 and all the tailgating. And early in the year last year, those places were jammed. but it was during the game too. People were staying out there. It was like, well, come on in, folks.
Right.
Let's watch the game. It's fun to tailgate.
Yeah.
And I think that's important too. But I think, I think if you just keep hammering away at it and have some success, build the momentum, get off to a really good start, I think the fans will come. But it's a little bit of a show me situation. Show me what you got. Show me some consistency, and then I'll be back in the stands.
Yeah, and Illinois fans have been beaten up in football. There's no question. 9 straight losing seasons, and I'm with you. I think this is the year that we can stop that. It's a painful admission that it has now been. I think this is a decade now since we've seen a 7-win season. That's where the bar is set, but I think it's possible. And Brett's got him on the right path. Hey, Brian, we're so thrilled that you're on the show with us and that you're on the call again for Illini sports, football, and basketball. We appreciate your time. Have a great call on Saturday afternoon, and we look forward to talking to you soon.
All right. Thanks, Larry, and keep up the great work on your end, too. You guys are doing great.
Thank you. We're having a lot of fun with this, and we appreciate your friendship. Brian Barnhart, he's the voice of the Fighting Illini. Again, you can catch him all along the Busey Network coming up here all season long as you follow Illini sports. And again, the big game coming up on Saturday, Illini and Wyoming. Stay with us. We'll hear more from Brett Bielema, and we'll get the guys' comments as well as we'll hear what Josh Whitman had to say, talking about, the Big Ten massive media deal. Maybe the number's not quite what you think. We'll hear about that coming up after a quick timeout here on the Sports Spectacular. Illini Athletic Director Josh Whitman made his first comment since the Big Ten announced its record-breaking TV media rights deal that kicks in next summer. Here's a bit of his news conference, and we'll follow with some of our own comments.
I think it just is a tremendous testament to the brand and reputation of the Big Ten Conference, the breadth of this league, and the attractiveness of what's happening in the Big Ten and with our member institutions now from coast to coast. Excited about the visibility, the platforms that our student athletes will have access to as they put on our uniform and now travel around the country to compete on behalf of the University of Illinois. Give a lot of credit to Commissioner Warren, our Big Ten staff, my colleagues across the conference. This is a negotiation that we had been preparing for a very long time. I mean, these are, as you would imagine, big deals to the conference, to each of the member schools. And so you don't just walk into this the day before and have a 5-minute meeting and then go and start meeting with the media companies. This is something we've been anticipating for quite a while, and hats off to everybody who was directly involved in it and bringing us across the finish line. Really proud to be associated with the league and looking forward to building stronger relationships with those partners. Obviously, most of them are people we've worked with previously. But there are some new names in the fold, most notably NBC, and so excited about getting to know them and spending time with them as we move forward to broadcast and shed great light on the wonderful things happening across the Big Ten Conference. So with that, I'll stop and open it up for any questions you guys might have.
Just from a practical standpoint, what does the new contract mean for you guys? What can you do? What will you be able to do later that you can't do now?
Well, I think it strikes a nice balance. Obviously, trying to continue to be traditional in the sense of the linear programming, the profiles of the networks that we're working with, the Foxes, CBSs, NBCs of the world. Big Ten Network, of course, is really the backbone of a lot of what we do. But it also starts to dip our toe into a more, perhaps a younger audience, an audience that's consuming our sports in a different way through the direct consumer streaming platforms, the things that we'll be doing with BTN Plus and now with the Peacock Network owned by NBC. Excited about that. I think from the department's perspective, certainly the financial benefits are meaningful. It will allow us to continue to be, I think, very stable in an uncertain environment. I will say on that front, I don't think that everyone should believe everything they read in terms of what the projections are. I don't think that the numbers will be quite where some have been reporting. It looks like things will start flat and then we'll start to move up gradually in future years. Again, incredibly excited about it, but we want to make sure that we manage expectations on that front as well.
Josh, what does athlete representation look like if and when they ask for a piece of this?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that as we all understand, we're living in a very dynamic evolutionary time in college athletics. We talked about this at some length during the roundtable this summer. I think that we're continuing to evaluate the model, figure out how we can do this better, how we can develop college athletics 2.0. What's this going to look like for the next 100 years? I think that if you were to talk to my colleagues, there's clearly an understanding that change is afoot, and what that change ultimately looks like is still very much to be determined. I know that there's an appetite from a lot of people to continue to provide additional benefits to the student athletes. What those benefits are, how they're formulated, is it true pay, or does it make them employees? Those are all things that I think are very much to be determined. But it all has to be put into the mix as we talk about conference realignment, as we talk about expansion of the CFP, as we talk about the future of the NCAA. That has to be another really important part of that overarching conversation. And I'm just really confident in the people who are having the discussion at this point to chart what that future course will look like.
Josh, I don't know if you knew when you got here if you'd be at the head of the athletic department when all these changes are happening. Have you had to evolve how you feel about athlete pay, NIL, things like that? Like, how have you had to kind of adapt?
Yeah, I think so. I think clearly the pace of change is just so accelerated at this point in time. So when I got here now almost 7 years ago, if you had told me, hey, this is where we're going to be or be headed 7 years later, it probably wasn't something that I had spent a lot of time really thinking critically about. But certainly I've made up for lost time here in the last several years, and I've thought a lot about these things. And like most people, or many people anyway, I think that my understanding of our system has certainly deepened. I think my understanding of the challenges and the opportunities that we're confronted with have evolved. And I think having a greater appreciation for where I think we can go and should go has certainly changed over time as well. And so it certainly is a different dynamic, a different landscape than it was in 2006, early 2016 when I got here. What's exciting, though, I think, is both in this position and then across the Big Ten Conference to have a prominent voice in those discussions makes this a really exciting time for me as a professional.
You seem to have embraced the discussion about student athlete pay, NIL, all those things. Like, is that because you see the opportunity you could present to your athletic department?
I think that's one of the reasons. I think that as you look across the landscape, it's evident that change has to come. And I think it's a question of the process by which that change occurs. And what we've watched happen over the last decade are a lot of other people have started to dictate change to us, whether it's the courts or the state legislatures or even the media to an extent. And so I'm a big believer that we're in a position now where we should learn from what's happened over the last decade and be more proactive in some of our decision making. That's really hard to do because that kind of change comes with it inevitably challenge and struggle and trying to develop consensus even amongst 14 or soon to be 16 schools in the Big Ten, let alone say 65 or 69 in the Power 5 or the 130 in the FBS or 350 in all. Each of those, as you grow the pot in each case, there are more and more voices at the table, and it gets really hard for people to develop consensus around different concepts.
Yeah, the one thing I thought was interesting about Whitman was talking about how the money's pretty much all spent because they know what it's earmarked for. So they had a good idea what it was going to be. And I also think it's interesting that the Big Ten ADs are trying to kind of minimize the amounts. You know, you've seen that they like to leak that big amounts. They've kind of minimized these amounts. Well, of course they are. They still have to fundraise. And if they say, hey, you got $100 million, you don't need any money from me, what are you talking about? So they're not going to be out there, yep, we got plenty of money, don't donate anymore. So they're still trying to ratchet up donations. Don't you worry.
Yeah, and it's such a game changer. And you really have to think, like, if you're Maryland and Rutgers, you gotta be like, what a great time to have joined the Big Ten. You know, we really haven't done much in the Big Ten, but they want to drop $60 to $100 million a year into our pockets. I know that Maryland hasn't had a lot of wins on the football field, and neither have Rutgers. But boy, in life, they're big winners, very big winners.
How about Rutgers? They got to be going, we're Rutgers and we get like $100 million and we're still Rutgers. What a deal.
Yeah, it's I think of one of my favorite movies, History of the World Part 1. It's good to be the king.
Yeah, it is good to be the king. Yes, it is.
It's good to be the knight.
Yeah.
Because that's right. We're just here and we get all that money and we guys like to be us. Yes, you would.
How much is Rutgers going to spend on DoorDash this year?
That's right. Exactly.
You got to wonder.
$450,000. Oh, please. That's
packaging. 4.5 mil on DoorDash.
Exactly. All right, guys.
Although you need air quotes.
DoorDashed. 3 meals a day, all DoorDashed.
You need, though, whenever you say DoorDash, you have to use air quotes.
Exactly.
DoorDash.
That's right.
Hey, anybody got any DoorDash money?
Hi.
Oh my. All right. Our farm segment is up next as we talk about 3 goats on the Sports Spectacular. As we continue here, we mentioned some goats before the break. Tom Brady of the Bucs, he took an 11-year hiatus and then returned to camp. The team didn't care. Makes his wife happy. Why do we care? Isn't this much ado about nothing that he took time off during training camp?
Well, I think it was 11 days, Larry.
Yeah, 11 years
11 days.
would be quite a
It's
long.
taken 11 years. He'd be like 80 now. So, but hey, he's Tom Brady needed 11 days off because he's old. He had to heal.
I'm old. I'm getting my days mixed up.
Exactly.
And my years. Go ahead.
So, no,
you know what? It's Brady. It's Brady. Just get him in line to win another Super Bowl. He'll be fine.
Does he need to learn the system at this point? I mean, seriously, the guy's been playing since the turn of the century.
He's been playing for 11 years.
Yeah, exactly.
He took 11 days off for anyone who's confused. My goodness. Yes, it must be the end of the show. Tom Brady. Yeah, we don't care. He comes back and he's going to go win, 11 games again and be an MVP candidate. Come on. He knows what he's doing. Speaking of MVPs, Tiger Woods and Michael Jordan in the upcoming PGA Tour 2023 video game. Tiger, I could see that, but Jordan making an appearance at almost age 60.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Jordan's still popular. You know, so that they put him, anybody who's popular, put him on there. There's about, they got about 40 guys they can't put on the PGA Tour game anymore. So because they're in LIV golf, saying and fewer people to pick from. So let's go with Jordan.
I'm kind of hoping they do Charles Barkley with an accurate golf swing, because that is one of the ugliest swings. They might as well put me in that game.
They were going to put Barkley on, but they can't because he never swings the same way twice. So there's no way to put him on there as a character.
Poor Charles.
Well, that's what makes the game great. If you put Charles Barkley on there and you're dumb enough to pick him as your player, you don't know how to set the shot because every swing is different.
That is true.
With the hitch and the exactly. Oh my goodness. Okay, boxing. You guys are boxing fans, and you were saying in the break about just how big this past weekend was. Just huge.
Yeah. You had Usyk beating Anthony Joshua with some unbelievable hand speed, and then you saw a total meltdown of the former heavyweight champion as he threw the belts out of the ring, left the ring. Somebody said something to him. He jumped back in the ring, got the microphone from the ring announcer and started talking on a monologue that made very little sense, and then urged the entire crowd to do hip hip hooray for the champ 5 times, of which I had no idea how to respond to that as a viewer at home. I was speechless.
I just want to see a great fight. Obviously, I want to see Usyk and Fury.
Yeah,
and that's
I
what
agree.
I want to see. That's what everybody wants to see, and let's make that happen. Boxing, you tend to not have the big fights, but on the other hand, on the MMA side, we also had a huge upset.
Yes,
Kamaru Usman, who is considered the #1 pound for pound guy in the world, gets beat, and he pretty much controlled the fight for the first, I don't know, what would it be, 24 minutes? Then he got kicked in the head. And that just goes, that's the sport where you get kicked in the head one time and it's over. And that's what happened to him by Leon Edwards. Kudos to him because he's a good fighter too.
What I like about Leon is that you can go for the knockout and risk being KO'd yourself, or you can kind of just, lose the decision and talk about what might have been. He does an awesome feint, throws a kick over the top, right in the head. And I'm sure if he hadn't landed that, the fight wouldn't have lasted much longer. He probably would have got KO'd himself. But I got to give it to a guy who's like, I'm either going to get taken out of here on my back or I'm going to win this. Nice job.
And there you have it. We will end there with fisticuffs, the way every good show should end, with fighting. It's been a great couple of hours. Hopefully you've enjoyed it as well. Two great games to enjoy this week in Big Ten country, Nebraska and Northwestern, and Illinois and Wyoming. For Brad and Mike, I'm Larry. We'll see you back here at the same time next week.